Joining us for our next Impact and Influence session is Heidi Walkinshaw of Blackbird Creative. Heidi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, a lot of people know you from the industry, but you've had a bit of a change in the last 6 months. So I would love to start today's session off by just telling your story. Can you just give us a really quick oversight of, what your backstory is?
Yeah, of course. So I've been in the industry now for over 2 decades, which is really kind of frightening to think about when I start to think about what birthday is coming up in the next couple of weeks. But within that space of time, it's been working at the coalface. And then for the last, over the last decade, I was working in that training, consulting and coaching space, helping to strategize with businesses, pulling things apart. I had a client once that used to refer to it as, it's like pulling apart the lawnmower and then putting it back together again, and whatever's left over, just hoik it out, as he used to say to me. And helping to coach businesses and coach teams as well in that property management space to keep them grounded and productive and look at efficiencies and growth and those sorts of things, not just growth from the business side, but growth within themselves too. So the last few years through COVID was probably pretty intense when it comes to things. I can remember in that first lockdown that we had, I was doing upwards of around about 30, 40 coaching sessions, possibly even more a week, while homeschooling and doing those things too. So it was, there were challenges that were there, but there were also rewards that came out of that too, because being forced to slow down, I think, also meant that there was more time, that less stress levels, I guess, that I found, as much as it was giving so much to people during those coaching. But I got a surprise baby out of it. So I always kind of say, as tough as that lockdown period was, there are positives that have come, and lessons, a lot of lessons for everyone. I think if nobody learned anything out of that period of time, or out of these last 3 years, then there's something wrong, or there's you've kind of been in a bubble, I think, to some degree. Yeah. So and then within after going back in August, it was August last year, after having some time off on mat leave, and I'm not great with taking downtime, I suppose. I've always kind of tried to fit too much in, studying a uni degree and raising a child, and also working part / full time is something I'm just so used to running at full tilt. Yeah. But then eventually at some point, running at full tilt isn't necessarily always going to work, and it's funny for anyone that kind of follows me on Insta, or is a friend on Insta. I've put a couple of posts up over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, I think, just saying, things like you can go and go and go until at some point the universe screams at you that you need to stop, screams at you that something's got to change. You can't keep running at this trajectory, and you do. You need to stop. You need to change. And I think I found that when I was starting to self-reflect and starting to think about what it was that I wanted, there was a bit of, I needed another challenge. I loved my clients, and it was probably when I know when I finished up doing what I was doing, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. There were a lot of sleepless nights, there were a lot of tears, there were a lot of am I doing the right thing? What am I doing? Is this the right decision to make? And back at the start of January, I'd started to think about, what's the next thing? And I did a copywriting course, copy and content writing course. And I actually found it for the first time in a long time. I'd had this excited kind of flutter in my stomach that it's like, oh, wow, this isn't easy, but it's something new. And I'm excited by this. So I made the decision that I think it got to about sort of March or April, and it was a lot of thinking. And when I make a decision, I was like, I'm an overanalyzer. I always have been an overanalyzer. as you know. So I will tend to look at all of the different scenarios, what can happen here, there, and everywhere. My husband often says, sometimes when it's like, he said, I know when it comes to you walking into a car yard to buy a car, you've already thought about it for 12 months before you've actually made that decision as to what car you're going to buy. So I will make lists, and I'll mentally categorize things. And for me, I'm not a risk taker at all. I've always gone with the safe road. So it was taking an absolute massive leap of faith and starting. So I was following a couple of different blogs, and I thought, you know what, even if I don't have anything at this point, I need to just take a jump. I need to just take a leap and hope that the universe will work itself out. It'll catch me if I'm falling. And if it doesn't, what's the worst that can happen? So I took I gave my resignation. And as I said, it was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, because I've never had, since I was about 15 years old, I've never not had a job to go to. And that's a very, very scary kind of concept, very scary kind of thought. And after a couple of weeks, this writing thing was growing, and this writing thing was, this is what I want to do. This is actually really exciting. I already writing anyway. I've got a children's picture book coming out at the end of the year that was, that came around about the same time as I'll come back to that shortly, but just another little project that I have on the side. And sitting and thinking about it and going through some concepts, and Blackbird with Collaborative was born. So Blackbird comes from the Beatles song. If you're a Beatles fan, you would know of Blackbird. Blackbird's the song that I sing to my girls. Especially my youngest, she's come from something very broken. So and when I say broken, it's me. I'm hoping I'm going to make you cry. It's other people I talk about it, and they start to get a bit. So it's something that I suppose that it's learning to fly, and it's learning to create something new and create something from where those broken parts, and putting things back together. And I've always, I suppose, been a fixer, and putting things back together and breaking them apart, putting them together, and seeing other people fly. And I think it was a time for me to kind of go, right, well, I've spent half my life offering advice and giving other people, building their businesses and seeing them grow. And yes, over the years, I've been on stage and I've been up talking, and with ARPM and LPMA and and other training and coaching, consulting events and things like that. I've been on stage, but largely it was behind the scenes, and that's where I preferred to be, was behind the scenes and helping people from that back end side, and then seeing the biggest reward for me was seeing them achieve great things within their businesses, and just seeing those things go. It's like letting your children go off into the world, I suppose, in a way, knowing that they've achieved what they want to. And helping to make those harder decisions for business owners. So it's been a rewarding career so far, and I love the real estate industry. But it was also a time that I think I needed to make a decision of, something's got to give, and I need to stop now before I start to hate it. And I don't ever want to hate it. Yeah. I want to be able to still have that passion for the industry without getting very jaded. So saying farewell to your clients that you've built up relationships for so long, and to let go of that was very, very hard. It wasn't an easy decision whatsoever. But at the same time, as much as I miss them, I'm not missing. I'm not missing.
So you made the right decision, which is great.
Yeah, I know I've made the right decision. And look, to be fair, there were a few moments in those initial couple of weeks where you wake up and think, what the hell have I done? Have I made the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? Is that initial stress of I've got a limited amount of savings here, but I need to actually work. Yeah. I don't have the luxury of not being able to work. I've got, children. I need to support that. We have bills to pay, all of those sorts of things. I need to make a decision as to what this looks like. And it started to grow. So I've got a couple of little clients now that I'm working with, one retainer kind of options that I'm working with, one in the industry, one's not in the industry. So it's nice kind of doing some copy that's outside the industry as well.
Can I ask, Heidi? Sorry, yeah. Exactly what is it that you do? What are you offering in terms of that copywriting space?
So I offer any content or copywriting that people may need. So whether it's to create blogs for their websites, whether it's the website, about pages, their profile pages, their first landing pages, those sorts of content that they may need, property descriptions, if that's something that they're after as well, that's certainly something they can do, or profiles. So one of the projects I've been doing is for a Love Local site, which has been really interesting. It's in Victoria, so it's been really interesting kind of getting to know businesses down there and just doing profiles on some of those. So it's something from that side of things, but some sales blogs, some property management blogs they're just going out to websites for different companies. Also working on brochure content and those sorts of things as well that people might need. So anything that's sort of written down, anything that you might need, whether it be from descriptions about what you do, descriptions about products, or your profiles and those things, that's something that I can be working on or be doing. So recently I've also had somebody approach me about doing some kind of not industry based, but procedural kind of manuals as well. So but those sorts of things are kind of second nature. That's another kind of thing. So it's one of those things which is everybody kind of needs. I don't think we realize, and I hadn't realized as well when I started to look into it, was how much copy and how much content is actually out there that people need. Yeah. And writing has always kind of come a bit more naturally to me. It's not always perfect. I'm always trying to hone it out and improve on that as well, but it's something that I've always enjoyed. And I know that even from other things, from what I was doing with previous stuff, I'd pull things apart and kind of all this grammatically, and tend to be a bit more anal retentive about where those sorts of grammar. Maybe 6 years of university did that as well, with being pulled apart with writing essays and putting those together, that it kind of grew from there. But yeah, I think as well I delved into it from a point of I'm in the process of writing children's books, and I wanted something else that would encourage me to use that creative side of my brain, but would pay the bills, because there's not a lot of money in children's books unless you're like a Seuss or a Julia Donaldson.
We'll give the book a plug, I promise. We'll all buy
it. No, it's cool. It's fine. That's okay.
So Heidi, I guess I've got so many questions from what you've said, but for me, setting up a business from scratch, what are the lessons that you took away from that in the last few months? Because I know, like you've already said, like it's scary. It's, there's this space of unknown, and a lot of us don't like that unknown space. Tell me, what were the biggest lessons from that?
The biggest lessons for me was not being organized. So I am usually, yeah, I know, right? I am usually so incredibly organized in everything else, but I think what it came down to was I had an overwhelm of information. So I had, and trying to put the cart before the horse. So one of the things that I'd found was that I was just grabbing information from all of these different sites. What can I be using that are in that content, in that copywriting space? What can I be using? Where can I be doing from a template point here? What do I need to put in place? And that's potentially what I should have done in the beginning, was what I do with everything else, was make a list of and have it set out of I know all the lessons that there are to set up a business, for especially from that real estate point. I've been doing it for so long, but when it came to my own things, I just didn't know. And even from a pricing point, it's still that unknown of, okay, what am I pricing for this? That there's not really any benchmarks around it. So it's trying to figure out what their price point sits at and what someone's willing to pay for it. So it's
putting a value on yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even in real estate, we still do, right? Don't we? Like, all the sales agents, the BDMs out there, even the property managers, we've got to put that value on, and it's really hard when you kind of it has to be about you.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest things that I think I've always found is that putting that value on the knowledge that you have and the skill set that you're bringing to the table. So for most people, they're not necessarily going to know how to string two words or sentences together, or be able to sell themselves from that perspective. So it's trying to keep in mind that you can pay somebody an amount to actually do that for you, and then thinking of it from the perspective of, okay, well, what do I need to do to get that to that point where so that I can go, maybe I've got to get another sale. So if I'm paying $500 here for somebody to do this, then what do I need to do to actually pay for that? Is one sale or one management going to bring that in? So so from that perspective, I need to be able to look at it from my skill set too, and say, well, okay, what's my hourly rate? Potentially, what do I need it to be versus what's out there in the industry? And I found by joining, one of the lessons I learned was to join a group. So an ex-colleague on one of my last weeks there actually gave me a link toward a website for a copywriting club, a copywriting community. And I hesitated because I thought, oh no, I don't need to do it. I can do it all on my own. Mistake number one, don't think you can do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. You're not an island. There are people that have been out there and have done it before you. Don't feel like you need to recreate the wheel, because you can go out there and you can learn from other people, and there are supportive communities. It's not this competitiveness, and I think that's where it's come from. I've got this mindset from, especially real estate. It's a very competitive kind of industry, but other industries out there, and I found this community where it's this support group where they say, right, these are all the mistakes that we're learning and we've done with clients that we haven't set up with, or clients that we've set up with and we've made mistakes with, and these are the rates that we charge. So what I found was that I'm potentially undercharging in some cases. So it's like, okay, let's reassess what I'm doing here and what I should be looking at. So it's finding yourself. Don't think you're an island, and find yourself that those people who can support you in what you're doing. And I'm still learning from that perspective too. Like, my next step is, okay, right, I need to get myself a mentor. I need to get myself into a more of a community where I'm talking through with people and looking at getting someone that can help me strategize on what the next part of the business is as well. So it's looking for that external help where you need to. I think so much in business and one of the things I learned putting my trainer consultant hat on in the past was that people leave it until too late to actually ask for help, till they're at that point. Don't think that you need to wait till that long. The investment is so worth it to get somebody in the beginning, so that you know that you are making decisions that you're going to be comfortable with, and you're not going to make it harder for yourself later on down the track. And that's one of the things I've sort of been stumbling. I stumble occasionally, quite weakly. I'll look at things and think, why the hell, where did I come up with that decision? Like, that was stupid. Not doing things like having a contract. So it's getting, just a basic contract in place for those clients, just with terms and conditions and things like that. And I think the first client I took on, he said, oh, no, we don't need to worry about a contract. I was like, every ounce of, your gut tells you,
I was about to say, trust your gut on certain things.
This isn't, so better than this. You know how to do this. And I think that's a thing. It's that niggling thing in the back of my brain occasionally goes, come on, you know how to do this.
But I think, would it be fair to say, especially going from like working for yourself now, and it's just being solo, so to speak, that you don't have that person to bounce off, does bring in that sense of doubt.
It does, yeah.
So you're relying on you and your decisions own, like, and that goes back to that asking for help piece that you said, because I couldn't agree more. Whether you're a team of, you know, you're running a team of 100 or you're on your own, there's still that sense of being solo in that space.
Yeah.
And that importance of asking for help so that you don't have that kind of doubt that creeps in around, you know, the simple things that you go, oh, hang on, Heights, I know this.
yeah, exactly. And you kind of need, and maybe it's a fault from a piece where, because I was sitting on the other side of the table for so long with that coaching and consulting space, it's automatically, oh, well, I know how to do this and it's fine, without, you need to hold a mirror up or have that other person who's a mirror to actually turn around and say to you, well, why would you make that decision? So let's talk through why you would make that decision. Does that feel like it's a great thing for you to do right now? Or what do you want to achieve? What did you achieve last week or last month? Or what were your wins? What were your losses? What could you have done better? What were the lessons that were learned from that experience? And because you're in your own head, and being in my own head isn't a good space to be, let me just say. So I've learned over many years. So it's finding somebody that can be that mirror for you, or finding those somebodies. And you're right. It doesn't matter if you're a solo person that's doing it within your business, or whether you're a startup with nothing, with, you know, very minimal, or you're managing a team of 30, 50, 100. It can be very lonely in business if you don't have people around you, good people around you that are supportive and will also call you out on the BS occasionally as well.
I agree with you 100%. There's no point having someone that's always going to say, Hyde, you're amazing and you're doing everything right. Yep. Not saying you're not, but you need to know when you've made a mistake or perhaps not the greatest decision, because that's where you learn and you improve and you grow, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting you say that now. I think about it. Last night, my husband made a great comment to our 9-year-old about the fact that you need to know when you will learn what good friends are, and good friends won't tell you that you're doing an amazing job all of the time. A good friend will call you out when you are doing something that's really silly. But it's finding other people that are supportive of you, both of your wins and aren't there's a lot of tall poppy syndrome around in any industry that's out there, and we see that in everything. So I'm now seeing it from the sense of the the real estate industry, the book publishing industry, and I see it a little bit in the copywriting industry and content space now as well. So it's, you kind of getting I can see a cross-pollination of those sorts of attitudes across there. And rather than this tall poppy syndrome that's there of, let's celebrate that person doing really well. And you know what, if they are being a bit of we've got to rein that ego in a little bit. Come on, let's just put that ego back in the pocket and let's think about, these sorts of things, let's look at the bigger picture here in a sense as well. And I think that's for many of us is where we get stuck, is we get caught in that ego space. If I go back to, I did a psych major when I was doing my uni degree, and that was one of the biggest things they talk about quite a bit in terms of that developmental psychology, or the where we think and where we're looking at things. It's generally comes back to our ego, and comes back to that, whether we're thinking bad thoughts or thinking positive thoughts. It's all about that ego space. So sometimes I think we're our own worst enemy, and we've got to get out of our own way. But it's finding other people that can support us and call us out when we need to as well.
And we all need it, and it's okay to admit that we need it 100%.
Exactly.
Heids, I think that we've got so much here to cover, because you've mentioned, your psych degree, and you've mentioned, I'd love to drill down into more of these. So what we're going to do another session around this, because I'm conscious of time and I'm conscious of your time. So I think today we're going to wrap up these lessons for business, because I think some of those things that are relevant, whether you're running your own business, whether you're just a business within a business, which most real estate agents are, right? But regardless of our role, we're a business within a business. And it's about, all of those things that you said about knowing your value, having that support around you, having that plan in place, I think is really important. And then we're going to cover a few things off in another session, if that's all right with you.
It sounds great.
I think for me, just to finish up around, this change space, I suppose, because I think that's essentially where, you've had a massive change in the last few months, started this whole business. What's your thought process around that, kind of knowing when it's the right time for that change and overcoming that fear to just take that step forward?
Yeah, okay. Good questions. So for me, I think I mentioned I'm largely a creature of habit, is that change is not a huge thing. As much as I encourage other people to change, it's not an easy thing for me. It's not an easy thing for any of us, I think. And we've all had to undergo a huge amount of change in the last few years. I think there's as mentioned, there's been a lot of lessons that have been learned. And I think if anybody hasn't learned anything from these last 3 years, then there's something wrong. It's interesting. A colleague, Sarah, I remember a few years ago when I was before the COVID space, and when we were back in offices and full and that sort of thing, making a comment about I must have been having a bad day about something and grumbling, and her turning around and saying, you know what, you're not a tree, you can change, you can move. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think there's those sorts of things that come back to you occasionally in life or in different moments where you're getting these nuggets of wisdom from people who are far wiser than you are. And I think that's important, especially too, whether you're working within someone's business or within or you're working for yourself, we should always be learning. We should always be trying something new. Now, I'm not advocating for everyone out there to go and start to change businesses or change their roles or anything like that. It's individual to everybody. For me, it was there were lots of little things. There were lots of little indicators for a long time, I think, or had been for quite some time, that had sort of starting to slowly open my eyes to, okay, are you actually fulfilled, and are you happy with doing what you are? And you don't have to be happy 100% of the time. I am very well aware of that from my own personal kind of stuff, but it's one of those things that I think that eventually at one point the universe is going to screw. I'm very big on you'll get signs when you're least expecting it. You just need to listen. For me, it was a catalyst of different things where I'd realized I wasn't as happy at doing what I was doing. I wasn't feeling as fulfilled. If I can use the word boredom, that's probably something I think that I found as well. I'd also had a baby that I'd never expected I was going to have. So, and COVID managed to bless us with this gorgeous bundle of, my 9-year-old calls her a chunk. She is, she is full of sunshine and light, and everybody that comes across her are just like, oh my God, she's amazing. So she is just, I'd had many, many, many losses, more than I care to kind of think about, and I'd given up. I'd kind of gone, you know what, that's it. And we got her, and it was difficult and it was challenging. Getting her to the end was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. But I think after having her and then going back to work, for me, it was starting to think about what am I doing this for? I've got these girls now, and my eldest is full of fire and energy, and there are days where it's just so incredibly exhausting because of the questions, and the way her brain works is amazing. But we'd also had challenges that had come out there that I needed to figure out, and needed more time to spend with her. And I think for me, it was a wake-up call of thinking, I've worked so hard at this career for, so long. It's been, I've achieved everything I ever wanted to achieve in this side of things, but I need something more. I need something different. And I've been gifted this baby that I just was not expecting. And there's something there that you kind of go, okay, right. There's all these little things, these nuggets that start to add up. And for me, I think I'd found that one of my faults, I suppose, of many, which I've been told by different leaders over the years, is that I have this tendency to give way more than I potentially should. And it manifests into I give so much to everybody else that I've just got nothing left for myself. And that, again, was another hard lesson for me to learn as well, because you just give, at some point you give and give and give, and there's nothing left for you. And for me, it was a catalyst coming home, and I was stressed at home. I wasn't being the mum that I wanted to be, or the, from the outward sense. It was I'm potentially not being a great mum. I'm probably doing okay at my job. I'm doing great at my job. I was getting told I was doing great at what I was doing, and all of these sorts of things, which is fantastic. But at some point, it's going to affect everything. So while it may affect one little element, and the family part was a big element. So I think somebody said to me at one point, you're never going to get this time again. Once the girls have grown, they've grown. You'll never get it back. And it's true. It's one of those things that I remember, even from all of the training space. And one of the biggest lessons that I used to say to people is that time is the most precious commodity that you have. Yeah. You're never getting it back. So once it's gone, it's spent, it's done. Like, it's the most precious commodity in the world. And for me, it was taking some very heavy pills of those lessons that I'd been teaching everybody else for so long. It was the universe, I suppose, saying, you know what, you've been telling this to everybody else and you're not doing it yourself. Yeah. Therefore, you actually need to start taking some of your own advice rather than just doling it out. It's time for you to take your own medicine as well. Yeah. So for me, it was one, I needed a change in a career. I needed something different. Something had to give before I, again, started to really dislike the industry, and I don't want to, because I love the industry. I get stupidly excited about new open homes coming up. I'm trawling, the sales pages and things of what's coming onto the market, or, looking through the Mossman Daily and going, wow, there's all of these. I can never afford that, but I could dream. So, it's kind of, it's listening to those things that are telling you, I need to make a change here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change your job. It could be that you've got to try something new, go and study something new, or learn something new, or take some time out. So take a long weekend. I know that I mentoring and coaching teams, and even teams that I've led over the years, it's sitting down with them and working through, actually starting to think about it and taking some time out. And it's hard to switch off sometimes. I know that better than anybody. Is that sometimes you've got to be able to sort of stop and just listen to what it is that you need. And it may be that you've just got to take a long weekend and you'll come back feeling refreshed and you'll be great. Or you need some time out to try something new, or go and do a course, or do a yoga retreat, or, everybody, half of Sydney feels like it's in Europe at the moment. I don't advocate for that, but if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But take a bit of a break, or start to think about, is it me? Is it within me? And is it me that has to change something within what I'm doing? Is it that I'm enjoying my job? And I had a mentor many, many years ago who used to say to me, and it was about a relationship rather than my work life at that point. And him saying to me, when the bad days start to outweigh the good, or you're waking up and you're not enjoying those things as much, you're not finding happiness in those things as much anymore, then you need to start to reassess what it is that is causing the problem. And the problem isn't always the problem. That was one thing I was taught, years ago. It's figuring out what the problem actually is. And it could just be that you just need a holiday, you need a break because you've been burning the candle at, for me, it was, and I often equate to other people, it's not just burning the candle at each one end or both ends. It's like the phoenix. It's just like, it's just like the candle's just like this blazing bonfire because you've burned it. You've got nothing left to give. I think for me, that was the biggest thing, was that I just had nothing left to give. And I didn't want it to impact relationships that I had anymore, or the work that I was doing, or anything like that. So I think if you are going to go down that path of change, it's don't make the jump and just think, yep, it'll be great. I need to change my job right now, because that's not necessarily what the problem is. Yeah. It's working out what's individual to you, figuring out what fills your cup, what sets your soul on fire, what you don't have to be positive every day. There's this mindset thing that has been for years. Oh, we've got to be positive. That's not the reality of the situation. We're humans. We're fallible. We're not positive 100% of the time. You're not, not even dogs are positive 100% of the time. So it's, it's working out, okay, yes, something might need to change, but what is it? Is it that I just need, I'm going to take an afternoon off from the husband and the kids, or my partner and the kids, and go to the movies and sit on my own and have 2 hours of my own headspace where I can just have a glass of champagne and eat some popcorn, and then you'll come back refreshed. But if you're going to make change, it's not upturning. I don't necessarily think that you need to upturn your whole life the way that I did. So it's I think it's making some just evaluate what it is that you're trying to achieve, what it is that you want. Yeah.
100%. Heidi, thank you. I feel like we could talk for days, and I know we could, because we do. So many takeaways in that for, everyone who's listening. I really do appreciate your time. And we are definitely going to come back and just tap into some of those other little avenues that you have, because I think there's some more wisdom in there that we can share with anyone. So, Heidi, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, we'll see you very soon.
Okay.